What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV, and y'all, Terence Bud Crawford makes one hell of a statement tonight. One hell of a statement in the welterweight division in boxing for real. He does what no man has done before, and he stops Showtime Shawn Porter in the 10th round. Now, if you all watched my prediction video before the fight, I uploaded it just before the fight, so I'm sure many of you all didn't see it. I said that I predicted the fight would go all 12 rounds by unanimous decision in favor of Terence Crawford, but I also said that I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if Terence Crawford was the first man to get Shawn Porter out of there and win by stoppage, right? Listen, y'all, this fight was a great fight all up into the stoppage. I feel like Shawn Porter made a great showing of himself, right? With the roughhouse tactics, using that head to get on the inside and then try to scrap it up and mix it up with Terence Crawford, because in my opinion, I felt like his best chance to win the fight was to scrap and mix it up with Terence Crawford. I felt like if he tried to outbox Shawn or fight on the outside, that was a recipe for disaster. And at times when he did, we saw the damage that he took, and we saw the great shots that Terence Crawford got in. But I'm going to say this too. Shawn Porter got in some hell of a shots as well and clipped Terence Crawford at several times throughout the fight. And he clipped him to where we saw Terence Bud Crawford smiling because he knew he got hit with some good shots, right? Shawn showed that he is a game fighter, a live dog in any fight that he's in. However, we saw the separation in skill set between the two fighters. On the inside, Shawn was getting some good work in with the roughhouse tactics that he usually has and what he does. I call him a baby Tasmanian devil, but at some point, skill is going to outweigh all of that at some point. And Terence Crawford hit him with some great shots in the 10th round to drop him not once but twice, right? And to my surprise, I'm not going to even lie, I didn't predict that Kenny Porter was going to stop the fight at that time. I didn't see that coming at all, right? Was the fight stopped prematurely? In my opinion, it was. I feel like Shawn could have gotten up and continued for sure. He could have continued and went on. But I felt at some point the punishment accumulation was going to build up. I feel like Bud had momentum, and he probably was going to maybe stop Shawn anyway, or Shawn was going to get hit with some very, very rough and tough shots where it was going to get ugly at some point. Kenny Porter, being Shawn's father, you know what? Even though I didn't agree with the stoppage, I didn't like the stoppage, Kenny knows his son better than anybody, right? He knows when his son is in trouble, when his son is in danger. He knows when his son can continue. He knows how much damage his son can take, right? And maybe him thinking, hey, I want my son to be able to continue fighting. I don't want him to get hurt badly in a type of fight like this. I'm going to stop this fight. Also, psychologically, maybe if his son were wanting to continue to fight, stopping the fight would do better for his psyche than just getting outright stopped. I say that because, listen, when a person throws in the towel for a fighter always has the excuse to say, you know what, I could have continued. I could have kept going. Who's to say what I could have done in the later round, in the last 2 rounds? I could have made a great showing of myself. I could have got some knockdowns on my end, and that works better for a fighter's psyche rather than just getting flat out stopped in a fight, getting knocked out, getting counted out. I'm going to say Kenny could have been like, I'm going to save my son the grace of that happening to him. If my son wants to continue fighting, I want to have him in alpha mode. I don't want to have him defeated and say, damn, I got stopped in a fight. I never got stopped before. It's the first time I got stopped. Maybe it's time for me to hang it up. Maybe he didn't want, if Shawn were to continue to fight, if Shawn were to continue to have a career, maybe he didn't want Shawn having self-doubt in his mind about his skill set or in his abilities by having him actually get knocked out and counted out. He said, you know what? My son took enough damage. I'm going to preserve him. I'm going to save his psyche. I'm going to have him still be in mental alpha mode and say, you know, he can have something to lean on to say, you know what? My dad stopped it too early. I could have continued, so on and so forth. And he could have played it out like that. But truthfully, I think that Kenny Porter knows his son better than anybody. He knows his son was in trouble at that point, so he got him out of there before some real damage could have taken place, right? Furthermore, too, I will say this in favor of Terence Crawford. When the fight got stopped, I didn't see Shawn Porter throw a fit like I've seen other fighters do when a towel gets thrown in for them. I remember when Diego Corrales, Chico, was fighting Floyd Mayweather Jr. and he was getting he was getting tagged, lit up. And rest in peace to the great Diego Corrales. But he was getting demolished. He was getting killed in there. Like, you know what I'm saying? He was getting beat every way possible. Getting tattooed. And he still was pissed off that his father threw in the towel because he felt like, let me go out on my shield. I still am up. I'm still a live dog. You never know what could happen. And he was pissed. He got the hitting the ropes, cussing at his father, snapping because he felt like, hey, I still could have continued. Shawn didn't do any of that. He was just like, oh, come on. He was pissed off at himself, but he didn't seem to be pissed off at his dad for stopping the fight. So maybe Shawn in his heart of hearts felt like, hey, I was going to lose this fight anyway. It is what it is. And he kept it pushing. And, and maybe he just felt like, he really wasn't going to have much else to give at that point, and he conceded in the defeat. I'm going to say this, though. That's one hell of a statement to stop Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter ain't never been stopped by nobody. So that makes the playing field leveled a lot with him and Errol Spence Jr. And they have to collide. They have to collide. They have to clash at some point. Now, y'all know Errol Spence Jr., my dog. That's my guy in a fight. I always said, though, I felt like Terence was a better finisher than Errol, and he had more in the toolbox. But styles make fights. And I think that Errol's style is going to pose a different threat to Terence than other guys have. I think Errol has a lot more in the arsenal than just the come forward style and rock'em sock'em robot style that people think he has and just outwill and overpower everybody. I think he has a lot more skill than what people have seen so far. He's shown it in the Mikey Garcia fight. Now, you can argue, of course, Mikey Garcia is not Terence Boyd Crawford at all. But I feel like Errol showed different wrinkles in his fight game in that fight, right? So I think, and even Shawn was even successful with the roughhousing tactics and the come forward, jump all over you type style at certain points in this fight with Terence Crawford. Now, I had Terence winning, but it wasn't like he was blowing Shawn out of the water either. You know what I mean? Shawn was getting rounds in and winning rounds. So, excuse me. So I think that Errol still would pose as a tough fight for Terence, for sure. But I think it's still a 50-50 toss-em-up fight. I think that fight still has to happen without question. Errol Spence was in the crowd. Errol looked pissed. And I think he was pissed because, you know what? No fighter wants somebody to do something better than what they did. If I went, head-to-head with a guy and I dropped him and I went, unanimous, I went split decision, I don't want a guy to get unanimous decision victory. I don't want him to stop the guy that I was, going head to head, back and forth with. I don't want that. I don't want a guy to stop him outright. When I was going back and forth with the dude, right? He wanted if Bud was gonna stop Shawn, he wanted Bud to really, really stop Shawn. He didn't want Kenny being the deciding factor in that. Especially when he felt like Shawn could have kept fighting, and Shawn definitely could have kept fighting. Errol Spence said the quote, he said, he had that Marvin Hagler shit on. Let him go out on his shield. Let him be a warrior. He a warrior. Let him go out on his shield. That's from Errol saying, nobody want to be outdone by nobody. He like, man, nah, fuck that, man. Kenny, don't stop the fight. Let him keep fighting and bang it out and scrap it out and see who come out on top. Don't try to end the fight prematurely and close the show, because I ain't gonna even lie. I was shocked as hell when Kenny did. I'm like, what the hell? Now, I still think Terence is gonna probably still stop him or just get the unanimous decision. You know what I mean? Get the victory for sure. You know what I mean? I feel like he's gonna get the victory. But I still was shocked as hell that Kenny was throwing in the towel so early and abruptly. I'm like, okay, he went down for the second time in a round, but who's to say he wasn't gonna continue he was gonna get up and recover between the rounds and still could have pulled something off. You know what I mean? But Kenny didn't allow the time for that. It was what it was. They moving forward, right? I think now that Terence Bud Crawford has leveled the playing field with this victory, like with the knockout, I think Errol Spence Jr. is going to still do something else to get more money in the fight. I think now he's going to go to fight Yordenis Ugas and collect that belt to get 3 belts on his end to Terence Crawford's 1 in order to keep that fight at a 60-40 split so that Errol Spence can collect more of the bread in the fight. I think he's going to fight Yordenis Ugas, which is still a very, very tough fight with how we saw Ugas do against Manny Pacquiao. But I still think Errol Spence will beat Yordenis Ugas. He'll get that belt, and then he'll have leverage to get the 60-40 fight. 60-40 purse split. I don't give a damn about the purse split at all. I just want to see the fight occur. Let me just say this too. I feel like after watching Bud's performance tonight, right? And Shawn was having good moments, very good moments with Bud. I must say, I wasn't shocked either because I know how Shawn give everybody hell on earth when he fight them, right? But I'm gonna say this too. After watching Jermell Charlo fight Brian Castano and watching Terence Bud Crawford fight Shawn Porter, the way Bud was doing certain things, I'm gonna be real. I think Terence Bud Crawford would beat Jermell Charlo at 147 pounds right now, while Jermell is 154 pounds. I think that Jermell doesn't have enough in his tool shed. Jermell not a better fighter than Errol. I think Jermell was actually a better fighter back in the day when he was with Ronnie Shields. Now with Derrick James, I feel like he's become more reliant on power to get the job done. He stopped guys several times in a row, and now he's not as sharp in other areas. I think that Terence Crawford has what it takes to capitalize on Jermell Charlo's over-aggression at times, counter him, and hit him with some shit that he can run into a firestorm, for sure. So I honestly think that I see Terence Crawford beating Jermell Charlo at 154, without question, right? Now, this is my thing. Now, I have no problem with Terence Crawford being number one pound for pound on the pound for pound rankings. I'm saying welterweight. I'm not saying in the welterweight division. I'm talking about in the pound for pound rankings. I have no problem with Terence Crawford being ranked number one at all now. When you get a stoppage over somebody like Shawn Porter, whether it was early or not, whether it was due to TKO, due to the father throwing in the stoppage throwing in the towel because he don't want to see his son get badly hurt or whatever. He want to stop it before it gets to that bad point, which I wish Kenny would have still let it continue because I still was interested to see if Shawn would recover, if Bud was going to outright just stop him, knock him out. I wanted to see the drama play out of the fight. Kenny wanted to preserve his son if his son wanted to continue fighting. So I get it, right? But yeah, I still wanted to see. I'm still interested to see certain things. But look, I'm sorry, I got off topic. I think that when Terence gets a stoppage of somebody like Shawn Porter, you gotta give him that nod, for sure. I have no problem with people having him number one on the pound for pound list at all. Terence is highly skilled, can do a lot of different things. He's a well-rounded fighter. So I have no problem with him being number one at all in the pound for pound rankings. Now, a lot of stuff happened tonight. Right now, I talked about how Kenny wanted to preserve Shawn for later fights. You know, his son can continue his boxing career. Shawn Porter announces that he is retiring from the sport of boxing. If that shall be the real case, I got to give it up for Mr. Shawn Porter. Had one hell of a career. Had great notable wins against Adrian Broner, against Andre Berto, against Danny Garcia, against Yordenis Ugas. Fought everybody you can think of. Fought Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman, fought Terence Crawford. Only person he didn't fight was really Manny Pacquiao in the welterweight division and in the up-and-coming young guys. But other than that, he fought everybody. Wasn't afraid to get a Kell Brook. He went in there and fought everybody. He was the first one to get a Kell before Errol got to him. You know what I mean? He beat Shawn. Kell beat Shawn soundly. So Errol went in there and got in and got the job done against Kell. But yeah, man, Shawn had a hell of a career. But at this point, after this loss, Shawn would have been a gatekeeper. Nothing more than a gatekeeper. He lost against all the top champs in the division. So at this point in his career, he would be a gatekeeper if he were to continue fighting. And I talked to my uncles, and I said the only way that Shawn would ever get out of gatekeeper status if he were to fight Virgil Ortiz and shock Virgil and get Virgil up out of there, get a victory against Virgil, which I think Shawn's best bet. I don't see Shawn beating Boots Ennis at all. Especially, you know, after I see some shots he got caught with. I think Boots might hit harder than Terence Crawford. I think Boots packs the hardest punch in the welterweight division, for sure. And I think the shots that Shawn got hit with from Terence, I think if it was Boots, he might have folded earlier in that fight. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, because I just think Boots has that type of power, pop on his punches and speed, dangerous combination. However, I think Virgil Ortiz, from the performance I saw against Maurice Hooker, I like Virgil a lot in his style. Very good fighter, rough, tough guy. But I think if Mo Hooker was touching him up like he was at certain points in that fight, I think Shawn Porter could do the same thing and get out of there with the victory. And I think if Shawn were to have beaten a Virgil Ortiz, he could put himself right back in the mix and the conversation for another title. But I don't see him beating any of the guys that hold belts right now. He beat Ugas before, but like I said, I wasn't mad at Shawn getting that nod because the fight was razor close. But a lot of people, I feel like Ugas won the fight, but I wasn't mad at Shawn getting it. I feel like Ugas was able to get out of there with that win. I think now, I don't know if Shawn would beat Ugas, because it was tough for him to do it now, but Ugas is riding high off momentum, so I don't think he would beat Ugas. I don't see him beating Errol Spence Jr. I think Errol Spence at this point, he beat him. It was a rough and tough fight, but I think that Errol would fight him a different way the second time and win more cleanly. And we saw what he did against Bud. He don't beat any of the champions currently. So he be relegated. Shawn will be relegated to being a gatekeeper. And I think that Shawn does not want to be a gatekeeper in the sport. He does not want to be just a guy that you got to fight to get to the top status. He don't want to be a gatekeeper. He wants to be a draw and a champion. And I think those days of Shawn being a champion, I think those days are, at this point, them days are over with. I think them days is over. And I think Shawn knows that, so he's not going to continue to fight. Now, we also see Terence Crawford tonight giving Bob Arum a backhand pimp slap and say, you know what? I'm out of here on your ass. Peace. You couldn't give me the Errol Spence fight before. You couldn't give me a lot of these other fights with PBC guys in the first place. I'm going to go elsewhere so I can make these fights happen and make these fights occur, which Terence Crawford needs to do. He needs to take command and control of his career at this point. He's 34 years old. He don't have a whole lot of time left. He has legacy fights on the table with Errol Spence. He could potentially maybe have a fight with Canelo Alvarez at 160 down the line, or soon, not down the line. We don't want to wait too long. That's a big, two big money mega type fights. He wants those fights to happen. So he's going to leave Bob Arum and say, you know what? Bob said I wasn't marketable, so he losing money fighting with me. Bob was shitting on Terence the whole time Terence was over there. Talking about how he don't make no money with Terence. Terence ain't no draw. He lose money with Terence. And he was praising Lomachenko the whole damn time. And Lomachenko don't even be speaking English like that. None of that, and talking about Terence isn't marketable. And I'm looking like, well, how fucking marketable is Vasily Lomachenko? None. Not at all. So, like, for real, Lomachenko's a great fighter, a terrific fighter, but he wasn't marketable like that. So what the fuck is you talking about Terence ain't marketable? What's the difference between the two? So I didn't rock with how Bob Arum was doing Terence Crawford. This shit was bogus and petty, right? So Bud is getting from under Bob Arum's wing. We shall see where Bud goes from here. He's a free agent currently. That was the last fight in that fight deal. It's a wrap. Finito. It's over. Top Rank losing their guys too. Shit, Shakur Stevenson might get up out of there soon. Later on, a little later on as well. Let me talk about Kenny Porter, man. I respect the father and son dynamic that Kenny Porter has with his son Shawn, the way he loves his son and trains his son and wants the best for his son. But it's just certain things you don't do. I don't like how Kenny threw Shawn under the bus after the fight. Throwing him under the bus like that, some guys get to a certain level, they don't listen, all that type of shit. I don't respect that. I think that's wild. I think that's just not okay. Right? Your son went in there against one of the top fighters in the world, tried to make a great account of himself, and then you trying to kick him while he down. That shit ain't solid, man. That ain't solid at all, especially when you stop the fight because you just felt like, okay, your son ain't doing what you want him to do. He might get in trouble now. Fuck it, I'm gonna throw the towel in. Like, nah, bro. Nah, man. I don't rock with him throwing him under the bus like that when you stop the fight yourself, right? Now, whether you stopped it because you feel like he was in danger due to some errors he made or whatever, that may be the case, but you yourself didn't give your son enough time to try to get himself back into the fight or do something differently in order to change Terence Crawford's momentum at some point. So I don't appreciate it. I don't really like it. And again, I'm not Shawn Porter. That's his father. Shawn doesn't strike me as a person who would talk crazy about his dad or belittle his dad or attack his dad or cuss him out or nothing like that. So Shawn was staying a respectful son. But I just feel like it's certain shit that you don't do after a fight. It's certain things that you keep to yourself. You keep in-house within your team. You don't divulge that information to the public. You know what I'm saying? Now that it's like, bro, like, sometimes I feel like Kenny be liking every other fighter but his own son. The way he talked about Errol Spence coming up, you know, Errol Spence came up with Shawn in the fighting and, you know, all throughout the boxing ranks. So he has a lot of love and respect for Errol Spence, but it was just like certain admiration Kenny shows for his, Shawn's opponents. Certain things, I just didn't like how the response after the fight. I didn't like how he talked about Shawn. I don't like that, man. I'm not saying he's a bad father or a bad trainer. It's just I didn't agree with the way that whole thing played out, right? So what's next for Shawn Porter, man? Shawn Porter says he's retired. Shawn Porter still got a lot of money left to make, man. Shawn is a company man. He's a made man within PBC, right? He's a great commentator, very likable. Everyone loves him. Speaks well. He has great boxing knowledge that he can implement within the PBC world with his commentary and all of that. Yeah, man, I think Shawn is a great ambassador for the sport of boxing. So he gonna be all good. PBC gonna have him commentating, doing interviews. He got his own little show on the little network, and he got his own podcast. Shawn has a chance to do other things outside of the square circle and still be great as far as money wise, and not struggle with his identity within his career. We shall see if Shawn is truly retired, but I believe he is at this point, and he got nothing to be ashamed about. He had a hell of a career, right? But Terence Crawford is a bad man. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, man. My uncle said something tonight that made me stop and think. My uncle thinks that Terence Bud Crawford would beat Saul Canelo Alvarez in a fight. He say Canelo is not taller than Bud. Bud taller than him, I believe, right? And guys, a lot of times we say it's the weight divisions for a reason. Guys may be bigger, so on and so forth. But he thinks that my uncle thinks Terence Bud Crawford is one notch below Floyd Mayweather. And he think it'll be enough to edge out a decision win against Canelo Alvarez. We shall see. It's one fight I would definitely pay to watch. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm paying to see that one, man. But y'all let me know what y'all think about the fight in the comment section below. Machiavelli Mills TV. I'm out. Peace, y'all.